Hi, I'm Christine from House of Smocking, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do seam-free pleating. The first thing you need to do is pleat your first piece of fabric as you would do normally. So here I'm pleating the fabric as I would do normally, and I pleat it till the fabric comes all the way through to the front, and I pull it off the needles. So I keep pulling it all the way till the threads pull out of the needles. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to unpick the threads for the seam allowance. So there you'll see that I've unpicked the threads for my seam allowance. Make sure you unpick them on the right side so that when you feed the next piece through, the seam will be pointing downwards. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to feed through my second piece of fabric, but I'm not going to take it off the needles. So you'll also notice that I didn't thread my needles up. So I've just pleated a little bit, so about half the depth of the needles, and then I'm going to ease the fabric off for the distance of the seam allowance. So let's say 3 pleats. So I'm just going to ease them off the eye of the needles, but not off the needles completely. I'm going to do that all the way along, and then I'm going to push the fabric back up so it doesn't slide off the needles. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rethread my needles. So I've rethreaded my needles, and you can see now when I continue pleating, I've got my seam allowance down there and this seam allowance down there, so they will join up like that. So I'll continue pleating, and then I'll show you how it works from there. So I'm just coming to the end of pleating my second piece. Obviously you can do this if you're doing a bishop, it's ideal, or if you're using a much thicker fabric and don't want a bulky seam to go through on your needles. But you'll see when I pull this through, keep pulling through, keep pulling my needles, threads off my needles. Oops. Just keep pulling, then you'll be able to see. So there you have your seam-free pleating, and your seams are on the other side. So there we have our pleated the 2 pieces across, and our seam allowance is on the back. So when you've done your smocking, you can then turn it over, and using your zipper foot or a cording foot, do your seam down the edge there. As I say, this is great for thicker fabrics or anywhere where you really don't want a bulky seam or the seam to show, because quite often if you've got a bulky seam, then you've got one thicker pleat, which is never looks that great. But there we go. I'm hoping this helps you. Thank you.